The Dragon Ball Legends 6th anniversary is almost here. And if there's one thing that we know about anniversaries in this game is that they do not hold back on releases. But just how crazy is Legends going to go this year compared to those in the past? I think a lot more, like way more than you'd ever expect. When you take into account that in 2024, they're already ahead of their 2023 releases by 40%. And the fact that they're increasing their output year over year, because in 2023, they actually released 5 more premium units total compared to any previous year. And with that knowledge, you have to imagine that they have no plans of slowing down going into an anniversary. And for those always curious about when the anniversary will actually start, first off, you can start by hitting that like button down there. Do you see it like highlight? Secondly, the reveals and stuff was announced for the 25th at 2 UTC, which would be late on the 24th for everywhere in the States. And then we should be summoning for the character literally after reset on the 25th. Now, the question everyone always wants the answer to, who will they release during the anniversary? Before we can answer that, we have to first figure out the format of releases they're going to go with. Most games have a typical pattern they follow, but not Legends. This game has changed up its format so many times, it's actually impressive. I think there are realistically 4 different formats the 6th anniversary could follow, 2 that will feel familiar, and 2 that could really shake things up. Starting with the most typical one, double LF to start, 1 LF in the middle for part 2, and an Ultra to wrap it all up. This is the most recent format we saw in Legends Fest 2023. The other typical format we could see is 1 LF in part 1, 2 LFs in part 2, and an Ultra in part 3. This is exactly how the 5th anniversary was structured, so I wouldn't blame anyone on hedging their bets on this format specifically. Now for the 2 interesting formats that I genuinely think we could see. First up, dual LF to start the anniversary. This feels familiar, and obviously no one would bat an eye for part 1 starting out like this. It gets interesting though when we get to part 2, because what if they did another dual LF release? Now, I know initially you're thinking 4 LFs in just 2 parts. No way. But if you really think about it, that's only an increase of 1 LF compared to the 5th anniversary and Legends Fest 2023. And I present to you January and February of this year. 2 LFs in January, 1 LF, and an Ultra in February. So if they'll drop 4 premium units in the span of about 5.5, 6 weeks, back to back like that in just regular months, then why couldn't they do it during a massive celebration like anniversary? Well, guess what? They can. And of course, after 4 LFs, they would wrap up the anniversary with a part 3 Ultra, and boom, it's done. Now for a true shakeup to what everyone is expecting, an Ultra to start the anniversary in part 1. Then 2 LFs in part 2, and another Ultra in part 3 to wrap up the entire anniversary. This sounds crazy, right? Not as much as you think, because I believe this is possible, and I'd even go as far as say most likely, because they've already tested this format in a much more low-key way back in October of last year. They released an Ultra Janemba in part 1 and an LF Revival Pycon in part 2. I fully believe this was a test to see how shaking up the formula would go. But here's the thing, that isn't the only reason I believe this is possible. So earlier, remember when I mentioned that they've released 40% more premium characters in 2024 over 2023? Well, guess what they've actually released less of? Ultras. Going into the 5th anniversary last year, we already had 3 Ultras. This year, we only have 2. If there's one thing that Legends has taught us, it's that they definitely aren't decreasing the amount of characters released. So there's an additional Ultra looming somewhere. Now, I thought about saying our first possible dual Ultra release, but I don't think we're fully there yet. Maybe Legends Fest this year, but I think to warm us up to that, they would want to do 2 Ultras in the same celebration first, which of course they haven't done yet. So start the anniversary with an Ultra and then end it with 1. Now, there is one thing I want to add to this particular format, and it's that the only difference I could see here to what I've presented is that they team up this Ultra in part 1 with a Legends Limited as well. I think if the Legends Limited character was hype enough, they would definitely do it and still keep us at 5 premium units for the 6th anniversary. But who could possibly be hype enough as just a Legends Limited to co-headline the anniversary with an Ultra? Let's find out. Starting with the first format being a double LF. There are a few signs right now pointing to very specific moments and tags that we will likely see during the anniversary, starting with movies. There hasn't been a celebration in this game going back until at least the 3rd anniversary that hasn't included movies in some way. Now, that's not why I'm saying a movie character will be here. It's actually this. There's a pretty big gap around 2 very specific characters that they haven't Zenkai'd yet, Gogeta Blue and Broly. But it doesn't end with them, because there's also these guys. Their co-headliners Zenkai awakened a year ago for the 5th anniversary, so they're definitely due up as well. And we also just got this free-to-play Dragon Ball Super Broly in March. So my guess is that somewhere during the 6th anniversary anniversary, something from DBS Broly has to show up. And I think still, surprisingly, they have a few ways of doing this. One would be a Super Saiyan God tag unit. We have them as blues, but we don't have them as Super Saiyan Gods. And oddly enough, that's a form that is very underrepresented in this game. Now, the other tag that actually hasn't had a character in a while is Fusion Warrior. We actually didn't get a Fusion character during Legends Fest. Instead, it was right before Legends Fest. And I would say somewhere during the 6th anniversary, a Fusion Warrior has to show up. Albeit maybe not the one you're expecting though. I think the way they make this happen is either with a DBS Broly unit like a tag Super Saiyan God Goku and Vegeta that fuses into Gogeta, or a new Super Vegito. Ah yes, Majin Buu Saga again. Did you happen to notice who just Zenkai'd? Red Super Saiyan 3 Goku, who is specifically from the Majin Buu Saga. And on top of that, the only 1st anniversary character left that hasn't Zenkai'd is that green Buhan. So the chances that he could get a Zenkai during the anniversary and that Majin Buu Saga are involved with the anniversary are very, very high. Besides all that, there's also a very specific mechanic that the player base has been asking for and we haven't got yet, which is of course an in-game fusion mechanic. And what better way to debut it than with a Super Vegito, the original anniversary headliner. They could either fill a unique gauge to activate it or do a revival like PyCon. But somehow, some way, I imagine a fusing character is somewhere on the horizon. It feels like the obvious next step in keeping new units interesting. And just in case they don't want to do a fusing character yet, or they do a Vegito, but then they also still do a Gogeta, there's a version of Gogeta that we still don't have, and that's Super Saiyan transforming into blue. So obviously we have the Ultra that does the intro into Blue Gogeta. We have the base Gogeta into Super Saiyan Gogeta, but they haven't done Super Saiyan into Gogeta Blue yet. So there is still a very obvious chance that Gogeta shows up here and may end up being the only fusion representation. But just wanted to note that if they don't go with fusing yet, we could still get a transforming Super Saiyan into Blue Gogeta from the DBS Broly movie. The other tag that we surprisingly haven't seen in a minute is Future. So I could easily see a Future character being here if they do a dual LF to start, and I'm going with my pick for my other prediction video, which was Tag Rose and Zamasu. It's just such an easy go-to and something that they haven't done in this game outside of that assist character, but we're not counting that. And another reason I think Future will show up, besides the fact that they just love the Future tag, is that this guy right here also needs a Zenkai, and his co-headliner just got his at the beginning of this year. But he's not the only old Future unit that hasn't gotten a Zenkai, because when we were looking at Legends Limited earlier, guess who's right there next to the TBS Broly units? LF Future Gohan, and he's even older than Murd Zamasu. So I think they've been hanging on to him for a while and waiting for a very specific moment to give him his Zenkai. Why not during an anniversary? And one thing I've not mentioned yet is that any character that they choose for part 1 has to be someone they can throw on the app icon, on all of the social media, everywhere, because it's going to be their like poster child. So you have to think of things like Super Vegito. You have to think of things like Super Saiyan God Goku and Super Saiyan God Vegeta. Like Goku or a fusion of Goku almost is guaranteed to be somewhat involved because it has to be their literal poster child for the entire month and a half, 2 months of the anniversary. So that's a key detail here. And if you're annoyed at some of my character choices, you have to think in the mind of their marketing team that was like, hey, we have to choose a character that is going to make people want to download our game. Unfortunately, that's just the business of it. So if you're like, Nano, these are boring picks in some way, it's got to be someone that makes people want to click on the app, get in the game, and check it out. Now that brings us to part 2 of this format, which would be a solo LF. I think no matter what, we will see another Legends original during the anniversary. I just imagine that that will be a new staple for Legends Fest and anniversaries, and I do think that there are several options that fit into the tags I've already mentioned here. If DBS Broly characters somehow haven't shown up yet, there's 2 originals I think they could do, starting with Super Saiyan God Gogeta. It's clear that they want to create a story within Legends and an actual story event that you can go play and make it make sense in the Legends world when they're doing these Legends original characters. And just so happens, Legends has the only Super Saiyan God fusion currently, like officially, with Super Saiyan God Shallot. So they could easily have Gogeta and Shallot interact. Shallot goes Super Saiyan God. Gogeta goes, oh, that form's cool. Let me do it too. Boom. Super Saiyan God, Gogeta. What if? If not him, and this was also for my prediction video from earlier in the year, a tag DBS Broly unit where they team Broly up with a character that maybe you wouldn't expect, right? And in this case, maybe Shallot. Or maybe another character I just want to see, so I'm putting him here because I want to see him somewhere in 2024, Z Broly. They could also make this make sense in the Legends universe. But if they don't go too crazy, right, they don't make it Broly and Broly, I do think at some point I could see them selling us Shallot, but tied to a premium character. and this could be it. Whether it probably would be some sort of base Broly if they went that route. That would be super unfortunate. Now, to not make every single one of my options be just DBS Broly related, they could also go with some fairly other obvious choices. Another big one that's absolutely Anniversary or Legends Fest level would be the Xenoverse 2 moment with Beast Gohan and Orange Piccolo. Dokkan just got through taking inspiration from that moment. So Dokkan has it, Xenoverse 2 has it. Why not give Legends it? Which Legends is made by the people that make Xenoverse 2. So it would make obvious sense. I don't know that they'll go immediately back into Superhero. We got Superhero from 5th Anniversary, Superhero for Legends Fest 2023, Superhero again in 6th. I'm not sure. This could be more like a Legends Fest character, but it's absolutely, I'm sure, somewhere on the timeline. And my last option for this part 2 section, and the one I've seen maybe the most actually, because I think they're going to keep these what ifs fairly tame. I know that you're like, but Nano, you just said Super Saiyan God Gogeta or teaming up Broly's. Those are still pretty sane, right? Like, we know that Gogeta could technically go God, and Legends has the only Super Saiyan God fusion form currently, so that kind of makes sense. But is Cooler and Frieza working together, not in any sort of like crazy form, just like they're probably their final forms and stuff like that. That's a tag unit I've seen maybe the most around the community that people want to see. I'm not 100% certain it is totally Anniversary level. I mean, I think it is because I love Cooler and I love Frieza, but I'm not sure if they think it is. I think it's just as hype as base Bardock and base Goku, but I just wanted to throw it out there because it's still movies and still would offer them the ability to do certain Zenkais like powerful opponent, etc., that would make sense, that are in line and we should be seeing soon. Not to mention that they do usually pick certain characters on the build up to big events for a very specific reason, and we just got an Ultra Golden Frieza, so to get some LOE representation somewhere in the Anniversary wouldn't be too surprising since that is the last Ultra that released prior to going into the Anniversary. Now, in this format, I am very confident that part 2 will stay a Legends original, and so that brings us to part 3, the Big Daddy Ultra of the Anniversary. Now, I think realistically speaking, this one feels very obvious. We had 3 new GT tag characters this year, but no Ultra, which is definitely deliberate. They wanted to save the first summonable GT Ultra for a big main event, and here we are. But who? Everyone thinks SSJ4 Gogeta will be here. And I'm not saying he won't be, but I do think they hang on to him just a bit longer. I actually think it'll be Super Saiyan 4 Goku. A, because I want my original prediction to be correct. I also put Gogeta there though, so I'd be fine as well. But B, mostly because I think they want to build more to Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta before giving us him. I know a big argument for most is that the part 3 has been an Ultra Fusion for the last 2 anniversaries. And even going further than that, the part 3 of every celebration since Legends Fest 2021 had been an Ultra Fusion up until Legends Fest 2023, where they gave us Ultra UI Sign Goku, which he is actually one of my reasons for saying SSJ4 Goku. They didn't make the UI Goku mastered. They made him sign. They didn't want to go directly to the inform just yet. So that's how I think they'll handle SSJ4 Gogeta as well, because when you look at the landscape of what GT has, it's pretty slim. As far as big celebration characters, or even characters left in general, we only realistically have 4 left. Omega, SSJ4 Vegeta, SSJ4 Goku, and Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. I would personally say that they don't see Omega or Vegeta as celebration level. I know that SSJ4 Vegeta has had a fest character, but he was on a tag unit with Goku. Now, both of these could definitely get LFs, and I think we'll end up with LFs soon. I mean, Omega literally already has an Ultra. It was the last free-to-play Ultra, but I think both these will have Legends limited characters before too long. I just don't think they view them as fest or any level. So that realistically just leaves us with 2 GT characters that could be a part of an Anniversary or Legends Fest, and both of which already have Legends limited versions. So it makes sense to me to go with Goku right now and then save Gogeta for Fest later this year, or even crazier for 7th Anniversary. Now that brings us to the second format I mentioned, 1 LF to start the Anniversary. Now, if they go this route, I really do believe the Super Saiyan 3 Goku was our hint, and a Super Vegito of some kind would be our part 1 headliner. That means part 2 would be dual LFs. 1, I think, would still absolutely be a Legends original, and I would actually keep the theme of DBS Broly. So I would go with the tag DBS Broly unit here and team that up with a tag Super Saiyan God Vegeta and Goku. This is where we could also see something future related, and they team up a Legends original with, say, the Rose and Zamasu I mentioned. Now that brings us back to part 3. I still believe this is their GT time slot, but I do want to say that if a fusion somehow hasn't shown up, then I'm fully changing gears in saying Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is probably here in the 6th Anniversary, because I really do believe a fusion will be a part of either part 1 or part 2. And so if somehow we make it all the way to part 3, no fusion at all, then I think the no-brainer is Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. However, this one small caveat to that is that if GT has somehow shown up in part 1 or part 2, then we're going off the rails, because then I'm like, okay, wait, we've already had GT, but we haven't had a fusing character. So are they about to give us like a fusing Vegito as like an Ultra wouldn't be that surprising. So now that brings us to the interesting formats I mentioned, starting with the 5-character format. Part 1, dual LFs that would likely be a Goku and Vegeta that fuse into Vegito. I'm seriously sticking with that theme. Paired with something like the Rose and Zamasu again, or, stick with me on this, an LF Buu that somehow turns into a Buuhan. Because as I mentioned way earlier, there's the green Buuhan, who's the only first anniversary character that has an Zenkai, but he's not the only Majin Buu Saga unit that is next in line for a Zenkai. He was right there all along in all the other screenshots. Kid Buu is also one of the oldest LFs that still doesn't have a Zenkai, and I do believe they are saving him for something big. What's bigger, besides Fest, than an anniversary? So I fully believe that a complete Majin Buu Saga Part 1 is not out of the question here. Now, with Part 2 and the obvious DBS Broly Zenkais that they've been hanging on to for some very specific reason, I would have to imagine if they went with Majin Buu Saga in Part 1, then in Part 2, we are entirely DBS Broly themed. Some sort of DBS Broly, again, with him and a Goku, him and Shallot, him and Z Broly, him and Paragus. That one I think would be a little lame to me. I'm not the biggest Paragus stan, but like I know there's like a whole huge Dokkan community behind that. That's not really my thing, but Broly mixed up with someone. I don't think they're gonna step into like giving characters forms that they don't actually have yet. I definitely think it's gonna be pairing characters up and stop. I know you're gonna go, but Nano, Gogeta's never went God. No, but we know that he can because he skipped the red form and immediately went to the blue form, right? So we know that that's possible. Like making Broly like a God form or something, like I just don't think that's happening here. So my what if with Broly is pairing him with someone that we haven't seen him fight with, and then you would team that up, and the other LF here would be something like a Super Saiyan God Goku and Vegeta. And then boom, I think you've got a fire Part 2 in my honest opinion. And then we're to Part 3, and again, I haven't mentioned GT yet, so we have to have some GT representation. So it's going to either be Super Saiyan 4 Goku or Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. Now for the most interesting format that I mentioned earlier, and that's a Part 1 Ultra. That could also have a Legends Limited with it. There are 3 characters that come to mind that could start an anniversary off that also don't have an Ultra character version yet, which immediately and obviously Super Saiyan 4 Goku. That would hit our GT representation and also be a solid poster character for the celebration. If not him, the first ever Ultra tag unit with Goku and Vegeta. You could actually make them just gods, and without any sort of fusion mechanic, they would work really well as an Ultra unit with a really sick them both going into Super Saiyan God intro for an Ultra. It'd be awesome. And then finally, and there was no way I could do this entire video without mentioning Tournament of Power at least once, Ultra UI Goku. Now, I know we just got UI Sign at Fest, but the thing is, Mastered UI is 2 years old as of the 6th anniversary. They now haven't touched TOP in what will have been 5, almost 6 months. UI Sign is the current app icon with the 6th anniversary next to it. It's not totally out of reason to believe that they could go back to Tournament of Power, and if they go back to Tournament of Power, the only real character that comes to mind that can be an anniversary headliner poster child is Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku. Then that brings us to the LF in the Part 1, right? And an LF that can stand beside an Ultra and still make you want to press that summon button. Now, to me, this could still easily be a Vegito. Do not sleep on the actual Super Vegito. He's a very, very popular character. And if not him, Future, it just like, I don't know what it is, but they like every one of the Legends devs just has like probably a button that's like, well, time to drop a Future unit. They love Future tag. I don't get it. The Rose and Zamasu, and the tag Rose and Zamasu is something the community has been asking for a really long time. I think when we first saw tag units, a lot of us immediately went, Rose and Zamasu would be perfect for this mechanic. Tag units are coming up on being 3 years old. It would not surprise me at all to see a Rose and Zamasu very soon. So why not here? Co-headlined with an Ultra. Now, doing that makes for a very interesting Part 2 and Part 3. You've likely noticed a trend in every scenario here, as I've already mentioned, but the Part 2, in my mind, is always going to be some form of a Legends original. The Broly What Ifs could be here, the Super Saiyan God Gogeta could be here, or one I haven't even mentioned yet, but could absolutely be one, and again, is not creating any weird forms or doing anything, it's just teaming up characters from different timelines. Like, let's say Future Gohan with his Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohan self, and pairing that together for a tag character. Could that be why Ultra Gohan released earlier in the year? It was a foreshadowing to a new, yet another Teen Gohan later in the anniversary. Who knows? It would definitely make sense. They could easily make a story for it, and boom, you have a what if that people would lose their minds over because this game loves Gohan. Just put 2 Gohans together, call it a day. And even more so than that, this Rose and Zamasu I keep bringing up would fit perfectly with that unit specifically. So like, let's go. As for Part 3, it really depends on what they do with Part 1 and Part 2. If GT has already shown up, like I mentioned, and they start the whole thing off with SSJ4 Goku, and we haven't had anything from DBS Broly yet, then they could definitely make Part 3 a DBS Ultra Broly or the Ultra Tag Super Saiyan Gods I mentioned before. But here's where this entire thing gets super crazy, right? Is that I could see them starting the anniversary with a standard Ultra and then ending it with our first ever Ultra LF. Stick with me. I know this is one of those things that we've talked about for a couple of years now, and it feels like one of those myths. It's just never gonna happen. But I would say that we are well within our timing for them adding that extra layer to an Ultra and giving us an Ultra Legends Limited. And the thing is, both these characters I presented here would be perfect for an Ultra intro. Same with Gogeta, by the way. Then also having an LF. And I want you to see the vision here. Imagine we're watching that reveals and stuff. We know it's an Ultra coming. There's always gonna be an Ultra in part 3. Basically always, right? You know, we see the intro, we see all the shiny animations, they're doing their ultimate, and all of a sudden the UI goes away and they start doing some crazy stuff that we just were like, wait. And it turns into a legendary finish on an Ultra. Obviously, at the moment, we'd all be losing our minds. Then we take a step back and go, wait a second, what are you guys doing with the rate on this? Like, what exactly do the summons look like for an Ultra LF? But in the moment, that first time that they get us from an Ultra with an intro, we have no idea we're getting a Legends Limited version, and an Ultra does an LF. I promise you, this community they're going to lose their minds in the moment, myself included. And one would have to believe that the Ultra LF animations would be absolutely insane. And speaking of awesome animations, you click right here and watch me react and rank to all of the anniversary reveals. See over there in that one.